we will now study microscopic appearance of acute inflammation. Okay? So we will begin with this slide. You're looking at the histology of what organ? Brain. Very good. So the brain tissue in this slide is normal. The abnormality that you should be able to identify will be seen in the meninges, the connective tissue covering of the brain and the spinal cord. Now, remember this morning we have summarized the three general microscopic features of acute inflammation. With regards to the blood vessels, how should they appear? What happens to the blood vessels as influenced by histamine, prostaglandins, and leukotrienes? Dilated and? What is the next vascular event? There is increased vascular permeability. But we cannot see that process because it's a mechanism. It's a process. What we will be able to see will be the consequence of that increased vascular permeability. So that because of the escape of large volume of water from the blood, the red blood cells will now be seen as almost completely filling. Can you see the pointer at the back? The red blood cells will be seen as almost completely filling the dilated lumen of the blood vessels in acute inflammation. Can you remember the name of that change in the appearance of the blood vessels? Normally, the cells of the blood should be present at the center of the lumen only. So based on laminar flow. Now how do you call this? Congestion. Okay, congestion. And then can you still see the dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater? Can you still see those three layers of meninges? No. What you are able to see are the neutrophils. There are so many of them. When you see neutrophils, that closely spaced with each other and then that numerous, you are looking at the microscopic appearance of pus. Okay? So look at the multilobulated appearance of the nuclei of those cells. All of them are neutrophils. And then how do you call that abnormality pointed? What can you see in that part pointed? None. That is the microscopic appearance of edema. Okay? Where the fibers of the tissues will become separated from each other. And what you will be able to see are spaces. So, separating the fibers from each other. So, because water, again, is inert. It does not take any of the stains used in the slides that we are studying. So, this portion of the slide is manifesting all three microscopic abnormalities that should be seen in acute inflammation. And because this acute inflammation occurs in the meninges, so the diagnosis for this is acute meningitis, or it can be completely called as acute suppurative meningitis. Okay, that's the abnormality that you need to be able to see on low power magnification. So to be able to come up with a diagnosis of acute meningitis or acute suppurative meningitis. Next slide. You're actually looking at the histology of a diseased lung. Okay? So the abnormality here will be studied later once we reach the chapter of disorders of the lungs and the pulmonary system. So, on high power magnification, you will be able to see numerous neutrophils inside the alveolar spaces. Okay? So, this lung tissue is actually having lobar pneumonia. You will learn of lobar pneumonia later. But unfortunately, for this patient, the infection in the tissues of the lungs have progressed or have extended into the connective tissue covering of the lungs. How do you call that connective tissue? That is covering the tissues of the lungs and the pleural cavity. The pleura. Okay? Now, the pleura is supposed to be composed of dense, irregular connective tissue and covered by simple columnar epithelium, which is called the mesothelium. Can you still see that epithelium at the surface of the pleura? No. So, what predominant color is seen at the pointed region where the pleura should be present? Pink. Okay, pink. And then when you shift to high power magnification, you will again be able to see numerous neutrophils, okay, infiltrating the tissues of the pleura. And among the neutrophils, we are able to see that pink, formless, shapeless material deposited at where the pleura should be and among the neutrophils. That's the microscopic appearance of fibrin. Okay? So that the complete diagnosis for this abnormality, excluding this abnormality, not including yet this lobar pneumonia present in the lungs, okay? The diagnosis that you need to be able to come up with in this slide is acute fibrinous pleuritis. And just to demonstrate to you the microscopic appearance of this specific pattern of acute inflammation, where fibrinogen of the blood becomes deposited at the site of inflammation. So making this form of acute appendicitis as acute fibrinous pleuritis. Now, can you remember what is the cause for the escape of fibrinogen in this form of acute inflammation? Remember, fibrinogen is a large protein and is normally present in our blood, suspended in plasma. It is not supposed to easily come out from the wall of the blood vessel. This was discussed this morning. Fibrin escapes the blood vessel wall when there is excessive increase in vascular permeability. There is marked increase in vascular permeability, which follows vasodilatation. So that's the abnormality that you need to be able to see in this slide to come up with the diagnosis of acute fibrinous pleuritis. By the way, I will allow you to record this slide discussion so that you can use it as reference when you study the slides later. You're welcome. Okay, before we study the next slide, we need to review the normal histology of the organ first. Can you remember the name of this organ? It's part of the female reproductive system. The fallopian tube. Okay? So, let us identify tissues of the fallopian tube. Remember, the mucosa of the fallopian tube is not flat. There are multiple finger-like projections that are produced by the epithelium in order to increase the surface area inside the fallopian tube. Can you remember the type of epithelium lining the mucosa of the fallopian tube? Simple. How do you call those? Fine hair-like projections. Cilia. Simple ciliated columnar epithelium. Can you remember the name of that connective tissue immediately underneath? Lamina propria. Immediately underneath the epithelium is the lamina propria, and then the muscular layer of the fallopian tube, and then the serosa, the outermost layer of the wall of the fallopian tube. Now let us go to the microscopic appearance when the fallopian tube becomes infected and becomes acutely inflamed. Okay? So, at this magnification, we can still see the outline of the papillary projections of the mucosa. Okay? And then we can still see the lamina propria, and then some portions of the mucosa are still lined by the remnants of the simple ciliated columnar epithelium. But much of the surfaces of the mucosa are not covered anymore by the simple columnar epithelium. Okay? So, great portions of the surfaces of the mucosa are now eroded. And then look at the appearance of the lamina propria. Okay? Picture out the lamina propria, the normal lamina propria that you have seen a while ago. Which one is more cellular? The normal or this one? Okay, that one. Because there are now also numerous neutrophils that have infiltrated the lamina propria. And then do you have an idea on why the epithelium became eroded? Whenever neutrophils are sent by the immune system to combat infection, particularly bacterial infections, what type of necrosis will develop? Liquefactive. So remember, in liquefactive necrosis, the tissues will become digested and liquefied by the lytic enzymes and the reactive oxygen species released by the neutrophils while they are performing their function. Thus, we are not able to recognize anymore the normal histology of many components of the wall of the fallopian tube. So this is acute salpingitis or acute suppurative salpingitis. The most common cause for the development of this is gonorrhea. Okay? So, pus will be dripping at the fimbria or at the tip of this infected fallopian tube. Can you remember the microscopic appearance of acute fibrinous pleuritis? Okay, what was the predominant color? Pink. So it will be the same situation with the abnormality presented in this slide. Fibrinogen in great concentration has escaped the wall of the blood vessels and become activated as fibrin and become deposited to the covering of the heart and the pericardium. So this is acute fibrinous pericarditis. Okay? So same with what you have seen in acute fibrinous pleuritis, you will be able to see the pink, formless, shapeless deposits of fibrin, and among the fibrin deposits, we will be able to see the neutrophils. So within the fibrin deposit itself and within the acutely inflamed tissues of this pericardium, there are numerous neutrophils. And then when you examine the blood vessels, you should be able to see congestion or dilated blood vessels. And then how do you call that abnormality pointed? Where nothing is present? Edema. So again, what tissue is shown to you right now? High power magnification. What? Brain tissue. Where we should be able to identify two populations of cells. The smaller cells, which are supposed to be the astrocytes, the microglial cells, the oligodendrocytes, they are collectively called the glial cells. Okay? And then the larger cells, which are highly variable with regards to their size and shape, are the neurons. So the variability will come from the number and distribution of the axons and the dendrites. So neurons, a neuron, 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 and then the cells with only their nuclei are appreciated or identifiable are the glial cells. So at this point, okay, be very familiar with the degree of cellularity of the normal tissues of the brain, where we will be able to see two populations of cells. The glial cells and the neurons, high power magnification view and then low power magnification view of the normal tissues of the brain. Now, as you scan the length of the tissues present in this slide, okay, you will be able to see this hypercellular area, more cellular than the normal tissues of the brain. And then you will be able to see dilated and congested blood vessels. Okay, one dilated, another dilated blood vessel, another dilated blood vessel. And then, look at the degree of cellularity in the pointed area. Okay, that's the abnormality that you should be able to identify here. And then when you shift to high power magnification, again, you will be able to see the numerous neutrophils. Can you still see the histology of the brain here? No. Because the brain tissue has been liquefied by the neutrophils already in this portion. And then when you shift to low power magnification or even the scanning objective magnification, you will be able to see that this portion containing pus, okay, better shown here, that the area containing pus is more or less well circumscribed or localized. What is the specific name for the localized collection of pus? Abscess. So the diagnosis for this slide is brain abscess. Again, to be able to easily diagnose the abnormality here, being familiar first with the normal histology of the brain, and then you should be able to see that hypercellular area composed of neutrophils. So, which is more or less localized. Okay, so what organ is this? Where you will be able to see in one microscopic field the entire lumen of this organ, the appendix. Very good. So we will review first the layers of the tissues present in the appendix. So how do you call that layer where you are able to see the epithelium and the lamina propria? Mucosa. Okay? And then the mucosa is separated from the next layer by that thin bundle of smooth muscle fibers, which is called muscularis mucosa. So following the mucosa is the submucosa. Okay? And then the next layer after the submucosa is the muscularis propria, or the muscularis externa. Inner circular, outer longitudinal. The outermost layer of the appendix is called serosa. Now, this is acute appendicitis. Okay? What again is the microscopic evidence, the very evidence, the most telling evidence for the development of acute inflammation? The presence of neutrophils in the tissues of an organ. Because again, the neutrophils are supposed to be present in the blood only. Once you see neutrophils infiltrating the tissues of an organ, it means that that organ is having acute inflammation. Now, specifically, the requirement for coming up with the diagnosis of acute appendicitis is the demonstration of the presence of neutrophils in the muscularis externa layer. So, you will learn of the reason for that requirement when you study the diseases of the gastrointestinal tract. So, for now, you should be able to see neutrophils infiltrating the tissues of the muscular tissues of the appendix in this slide, so that you will be able to come up with the diagnosis of acute appendicitis. Okay? So neutrophils infiltrating the tissues of the smooth muscle tissues of the appendix. And then how do you call the condition of that blood vessel pointed? Congestion. And then again, how do you call that abnormality pointed? Edema. So we have seen all the three evidences of inflammation under the microscope in this slide. Acute appendicitis. Now, the problem, you know what is the only available treatment for acute appendicitis? Surgery. Surgical removal. That is why the appendix. Do you know what is the function of the appendix? It serves, no, we will be able to live normally, even if the appendix is removed. But it serves as the most common source of income for the surgeons. Okay? So because you will learn later, when you study surgery, the most common cause for abdominal surgeries is an acute appendicitis. Okay? So there is no antibiotic treatment option for acute appendicitis. Because what happens is that as appendicitis progresses, okay, greater degree of edema will develop in the connective tissues. So particularly in the submucosa, where the larger blood vessels are located. So the intensity of edema will increase with the progression of time. So that what happens now to the interstitial pressure? There will also be progressive increase in the interstitial pressure. Okay? So initially, the veins, because they have thinner wall, will become compressed by that pressure exerted by edema in the connective tissues outside of the blood vessel. So because of that, there will be problem in the drainage of blood. So venous blood will backflow from the veins back to the arteries. So that, what happens now to the tissues of the appendix? When there is decreased blood flow, the cells of the appendix will suffer hypoxia. Very good. So that eventually the cells, because of progressive hypoxia, again, the cells of the appendix will die from what type of necrosis? Coagulative necrosis. Okay? Coagulative necrosis. Plus, the neutrophils will be sent in greater number because there is more injury from coagulative necrosis. And then remember, once the neutrophils perform their function, the lysosomal enzymes, the reactive oxygen species, will leak out from their pancreasomes. So that, aside from developing coagulative necrosis, the coagulative necrosis will eventually become accompanied by liquefactive necrosis. How do you call that pattern of gangrenous inflammation? So that's when the danger for rupture becomes imminent in acute appendicitis. That is why there is no other available treatment option for acute appendicitis but the removal of that diseased appendix. Okay? So we actually have a slide for gangrenous appendicitis. You have already discussed the pathophysiology. So progressive development of edema with progressive increase in the interstitial pressure causing compression. Initially of the veins and then eventually the arteries. So that the tissues of the appendix will die from hypoxia. So in that portion of this appendix, we are still able to see the silhouette of the mucosa. Even the epithelium lining the glands of the appendix can still be appreciated. But the cells are not anymore displaying the nuclei. So there is retention of the architecture, but there is evidence of cell death because of the absence now of the nuclei in the cells present in that tissue. So what type of necrosis is it? Coagulative necrosis. Okay? But remember, just like the large intestine, the lumen of the appendix contains millions of bacteria. Okay? In the absence of injury, these bacteria are harmless. But remember, the cells of the appendix are already necrotic. So that these harmless, considered good bacteria, become pathogens. They will now invade the tissues of the appendix. That is why in the layers where we are supposed to see the submucosa and the muscularis externa, can we still see the smooth muscle fibers? In that pointed region where the smooth muscle fibers should be present? No. What cells can you see now? And neutrophils. Okay? Again, when you see neutrophils, that numerous and that closely spaced with each other, that is the microscopic appearance of pus. What type of necrosis is evident here? Liquefactive necrosis. So you have liquefactive necrosis and coagulative necrosis. What specific pattern of necrosis is present here? Gangrenous necrosis. That is why this condition is diagnosed as acute gangrenous appendicitis. Okay? So, few hours na lang ang hulaton, and then this appendix will be ruptured already. So the danger with ruptured appendicitis is that the infection will become spread to the peritoneal cavity. Sepsis also. You're looking at the histology of what portion of the gastrointestinal tract? That is the mucosa of what organ? Where the glands are branching. Branch tubular. Oh, we can see the actual branching in that portion. What portion or what organ of the gastrointestinal tract? Stomach. Okay? That's the stomach. That's the mucosa where we are able to see gastric glands accompanied by lamina propria. How do you call that bundle of smooth muscle fibers separating the mucosa from the submucosa? Muscularis mucosae. Mucosa. Muscularis mucosa. Now, in that portion of the mucosa, okay, that portion of the stomach, the mucosa is still intact. And we can still see the submucosa. However, as you scan the length of the mucosa on this stomach, you will be able to see that there is sudden disappearance of the mucosa in that region. Even the submucosa also disappears. Okay? How do you call that defect? Ulcer. Okay? And then, at the margins and at the base of the ulcer, you will be able to see, again, neutrophils. Okay? Infiltrating this ulcerated tissue of the stomach. And remember again, that peptic ulcer is not only displaying acute inflammation, okay, neutrophil. So aside from the neutrophils, we are able to see here macrophages and smaller lymphocytes infiltrating the tissues of the stomach. So what type of inflammation is present? If neutrophils signify acute inflammation, how about the lymphocytes and the macrophages? chronic inflammation. So two patterns of inflammation are seen in peptic ulcer disease. Now, although we are not yet studying the disorders of the gastrointestinal tract, but there are preceptors who are fond of asking the most common cause for the development of peptic ulcer disease. You know what it is? Okay. Helicobacter pylori infection. So, that's the abnormality that you should be able to identify in this slide. So, that border of the ulcer, and then the base of the ulcer, and then the other border of the ulcer, where we are able to see again intact mucosa. So that's the last slide that we need to discuss for this afternoon. Do you have any questions?